So, one of the questions that I decided to answer out of the two was, how did the anti-slavery movement begin in North America? So, even though North America had less slaves than other places in the world, they played a huge part in the slave trade, as well as the protests that, took place after the slave trade and had to do with abolishing slavery. A lot of people had their own reasoning for being against the slave trade. Most of the common ones were, some people were just afraid that the population of African Americans would grow greater and somehow affect the control that people had over the slaves. And then you had the people from the religious standpoint, where they just felt like it was inhumane. Slavery as a whole was just not okay. And then you had Americans, African Americans, who had their own point of view and felt like this was a door leading to more freedom and more rights and the things that they were already fighting for. The ideology in America started changing, and people actually started to think about the rights that humans had, the rights that man had, just as a whole. And America used a lot of the same tactics that the British did when it came to abolishment in this certain situation. And although the root of the movement was religious, it became a huge political issue, and it caused a lot of debates and fights and physical altercations against citizens between one another, which ended up leading into the Civil War. People have been openly speaking about how they disagree with slavery since about the 16th century, during the Atlantic slave trade. And the idea of ending slavery started just as early as 1860, when the American Colonization Society proposed the idea of freeing slaves and sending them back to Africa. And they thought of this as a compromise to the whole situation. And by 1860, more than 10,000 African Americans had already been sent back to Africa. William Lloyd Garrison was a popular person during this whole situation. Garrison was responsible for creating a publication called the Liberator, which supported the immediate freeing of enslaved people, and that went for men and women, children, just anyone who was enslaved. So a lot of these things can all be summed up. People, like I said earlier, a lot of people had their own reasoning for why they wanted the slave trade to end. And the most popular one was, because a lot of people started to realize how wrong it was and how not okay it was, and how just everyone deserved to have rights, everyone deserved to be free and be able to live the same lives. So this is kind of how the anti-slavery movement started in North America.